Good evening, everyone. How are you doing? I understand that under the circumstances that we're in now, maybe not so well, but that's all right. We have to keep a positive attitude and we have to think about where we're going. Tonight, I'm going to talk about leadership survival in a crisis. You know, we have many people out there who are in a leadership position and they've been there for several years, but maybe they don't have the training that they need to be successful. Maybe they need to find that training. We know that some of our leaders are not doing as well as others, but there are some leaders who are doing very, very well. So tonight, I'm going to talk to you about part of the training for leadership survival in a crisis. And I'm going to give you a piece of it and let you see what it looks like, let you get a flavor for it so that you can understand what some of the roles and responsibilities are and what some people need to be doing. Some things they need to do right away, some things they can wait a little while, but there are many, many things to do. The most important part of this evening's presentation is talking about the 5 competencies, which I will cover, that a leader who is going to be in charge during a survival situation, during a crisis going on of any type, needs. And they need to know how to use them, not just know what they are, but they need to know how to use them. Tonight, I will also share some slides with you, some slides that have information and some words. I'll still be on the screen, but I'll be letting you read some of those items. Tonight also, I will make you an offer. When we get near the end of this presentation, I will offer to you something that is going to be very, very good for you, and I hope that you take advantage of it because it is free. And I'm trying to help the people who need help now. You know, there's a lot of folks out there who got training when they were in the military, or they might have got some other training in some civilian disaster preparedness, but maybe they're not in the positions that we need to have them in order to do the jobs they want to do now. Maybe we need to have them step up and take charge. Let me go down here and share my screen. Let me get clicked on my slide presentation, and let's talk a little bit about this leadership survival in a crisis. I'm not quite sure who that handsome man is on the right, but we'll go forward. For myself, I did 26 years in the United States military. I lived through tornadoes, typhoons, hurricanes, sandstorms, earthquakes, and unfortunately, Vietnam. I am a Vietnam veteran. In each of these cases, there were leaders who had to respond correctly at the right time and the right speed to prevent it becoming a bigger disaster. As an example, when I'm in Biloxi, Mississippi, and the Hurricane Betsy's coming through, they took all of us and they put us shelter in place. We went to a hangar, we were secure, we were protected, nobody died. We knew what to do, everybody could communicate. And then afterwards, we went out and looked for civilians that might have had problems. And then we started cleaning up the community. We had leaders who knew what to do. When I was in Okinawa, typhoons came through every year. And each time they did, we knew what needed to be done. We had a checklist, we followed it. Who was going to do what and when? We had leaders who were responsible. We had leaders who could motivate us, inspire us, get us going in the right direction. And in order to do those things, these people had to go through some training. So they went through disaster preparedness training in the military. And there they learned a lot of good things. One of the things they learned to do was to have some competence. Competence is absolutely necessary. We need people who are competent and skilled in the fact that they trust their own decisions. When we have a crisis, the leader is going to have to step forward and make decisions. And he has to know, yes, I can do it correctly. If not, he needs to step aside and let the person come in who does have the confidence to make it happen. Now, for me, I learned the same way many other military people did. This is an Air Force regulation. It talks about disaster preparedness. And there's 3 key elements that I'm showing on the screen tonight. You got to be prepared. You got to have the right information for response. And then you have to know how to recover afterwards. So you need the preparedness, the response, and the recovery. You need all three pieces, not just one. Otherwise, you're going to have some people suffering. Tonight, during this short webinar we're having, I'm going to be talking about just about response, because that's where we are right now in this coronavirus crisis. We know it's coming. It's already here for many of us. For some of us, it's almost gone. We wish for all of us it would be gone, but it's not. We're responding to it. So how do leaders respond, or how should they respond during this circumstance? That's what we're going to be talking about, the response portion. One of the first things you're going to need to do is you're going to need to get together a team. But let me talk for a minute before you start getting that team together. Let's say that you are the leader. You have a company, 400 or 500 people, maybe more, and you find out that a crisis has just occurred. A building has burned down. There's a flood. There's a tornado. Something is coming. There's some kind of virus or flu going around that's affecting all your people, and they all are catching it. What do you need to do? Well, this is what I recommend you do. And it comes from experience of being a leader myself after being in for 26 years. Soon as I heard that bad information, the first thing I wanted to do was smoke a cigar, or I wanted to have a cup of coffee. I wanted a few minutes of private, quiet time, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, just to understand what is happening. Because when someone gives you very bad information and it's startling, then you need to understand that you have to take a step back, gather your thoughts, and then go forward. So you need to think a little bit before you actually start functioning. It may take you 5 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe a little bit longer. Hopefully, if you have a plan, what you'll do is walk over to your desk and you'll pick that plan up off the table, bring it over here, open it up, and start reading it. Maybe that's your first step, just to get started. But after you had done that, then you're going to need to put together your team. And who is going to be on your team? Let's take a look. On your team, we're going to need to have the right people. Okay, I recommend that you think about 5 to 7 people, some number around that. When you get a large group of people who are trying to gather to make decisions, very little gets done. 2 or 3 may not be enough. I recommend 5 to 7 people. This is the number that I find works very, very well for us. We need those people to have a meeting place where it's quiet and undisturbed. We also need to make sure that these people are trained. Do these people have training? Do they have the information? Do they have experience? Okay. We need to make sure that we got people who have the skills we need, not necessarily the people who are assigned the position. Just because somebody has a position of authority doesn't mean that they're the one who should be making the decisions during this crisis. We need people who know how to respond, people who can stay calm, and people who can get things done. So they need to have the skills. We also need to have people who have a heart. They have to have some empathy. Empathy is very important right now in this case. You need to make sure that these people care about the worker welfare and the long-term survival of the company. We want people who are sincere with wanting to help the workers and help the company to restore the conditions they had before the crisis. So who you put on this team and who you get together is very important. Also, this team has to have good communications. If you haven't already shared cell phone numbers and computer emails and other ways to contact each other, this team needs them to share them so that they can get together with each other any time of day, anywhere, and it's important to make sure everyone has that information. Now, when you start to look at the problem that you're having, you know, it doesn't matter if it is a flood like our man in the picture here, or if it's a hurricane, or if it's a virus. There are some questions that you should ask, and those questions are important that you think about what they are, okay? You don't want to go out there and not know what to ask. The first thing you need to do is decide, do you have a real crisis? Now, let me stop for a minute here and tell you something. If you don't already have a pencil and paper or something to write down, I highly recommend that you get a pencil and paper and start taking a few notes, because you're going to not remember everything. Although I will send you a video recording of this, everyone will get one, but you still need to know a few notes from yourself, what you're thinking at the time that you hear this information. If you take those notes, I think you're going to be a whole lot better off. Some of the questions you need to ask yourself immediately, as soon as that group gets together, as soon as your core team gets together, is anybody hurt or injured? And if there's anybody else out there who's in the way who could get hurt or injured, we need to identify those people. Identify them as soon as possible. Second thing, is there any structural or physical damage to our organization? Is a building collapsing? Is a roof falling in? Do we have people inside the company who are spreading this virus? What can we do about them? What's going on inside? So we want to first ask if anybody is injured or hurt. Second thing we want to do is find out what's going on inside our building. The next thing you might want to ask, and this is very important, do we have a communication channel where we can stay in touch with everybody? How can we tell those people who are home that we have a problem at work? Or how can we tell the people at work that their family at home has a problem? We need a very, very clear communication channel. Now, all these details that I'm talking about, I'll explain at the end of tonight's webinar how you can find out more information, where you can get more training, and all these items. But tonight, I'm going over the high points. So, are our people injured? What's the condition of our process? Can we communicate with our people? And we need to ask the question, what's going to happen in the future? What can we do right now that's going to change the outcome a week or two from now after the crisis is over or the disaster is over and we're recovering? What can we do right now? You need to ask that question early on, and the group needs to put together that information. If I'm talking a little bit too fast for everybody, let me give you one more piece of information. When you get the video, it will have subtitles on it. English for those of you who speak English, and Russian for those people who speak Russian. So there will be two versions of the video that goes out from this webinar, okay? So we're trying to take care of everybody, even though that's very, very difficult. Let me get out of here for a second. Okay, so now, what are you gonna do when you call together that team and they say, we don't know what to do? You know, we haven't been trained. Well, that's going to be a problem. Then you as a leader are going to have to train them on the spot. Now, hopefully you have some people, doesn't have to be all elderly people, it can be young people or old people who are willing to take on the challenge. Now, there's something I'm going to tell you now that those of you who have read my books or those of you who have seen my speeches before know that I say over and over and over because it's extremely important. And I will remind you again at the end of the webinar. It is your attitude that determines your altitude. If you want the rest of your team to be excited, to be interested, to have empathy, to want to try and make this successful recovery from this crisis, you yourself have to have the positive attitude. If you walk in the meeting room with that team and you've got a negative attitude, what's going to happen to the rest of those people? You're supposed to be the leader. You have to be a leader. You have to have a positive attitude. Don't look for someone else to do it. If you want someone else to come in and do that, then you step aside. Let the other person lead. But you need to have a positive attitude. You cannot be wishy-washy. You got to be positive, okay? If you do that, you're going to have much greater success. Let's look at another slide. All right, when you start and your team gets together and you kind of talk to them and saying things will get better, you're trying to be positive with them, there are some things that you need to do right away. These are actions. First thing, acknowledge that it occurred. You know, sometimes when we've had a problem and we talk about the problem, we're told that we feel better. Now, many of us don't want to admit that, but it does work. If you have a crisis or you have a problem within the company, talk about it. You got a small team, 5 to 7 people, acknowledge the fact that it has happened. Because you're going to have to do a press conference or a press release or talk to the rest of the company soon. So you need to acknowledge it did happen. Next thing you need to do is be visible, be out front. You need to be the leader who is leading the way to this recovery and for the future of the company and employees. You need to be out front. Don't put somebody else in that position. You also need to have clear communications. As I mentioned earlier, you need to make sure that you are filtering the information for the truth. You know, right now we got the coronavirus going on, and we have heard so many lies and so many truths that we don't know what is true and what is lies. We hear it on the news, we hear it from different people. We don't know what is factual. You as a leader in your company need to be that filter who filters out the bad information and keeps in the good information. That's one of your responsibilities. We also have to demonstrate an eternal optimism. You need to tell the people when you're out in front talking to them, it will go away. One of the things that I talk about here in my home is that the sun will shine again. Now, by that, my family here, they understand that I'm talking about the virus. It's here now. It's on top of us. It's gray skies. It's hard times. We're in quarantine, but it will go away eventually. I don't know when. Maybe a few weeks, maybe a few months. We don't really know how long it's going to be, but we know it will go away and things will get better. Even if in your gut you feel that that's going to be long-term, you still need to show eternal optimism. You have to be the optimist. You have to tell people that we have a strategy. I'll soon be telling you what the strategy is, and we will live through this. We will survive. If you don't do that, the people are going to be suffering a lot more, and we don't want the people to suffer. Your focus as your small group, your team that gets together, need to focus on the workers' welfare and the long-term survival of the company. Keep that in mind. Have empathy for your workers. Whenever you're making decisions about what we need to do, you need to base it on facts and data. You also need to base it on your heart and empathy. You need to use those two, your empathy and your facts, if you really want to make a good decision. It's going to help you to think about both of those. Remember, we got to take care of the workers. Now, there's another saying that I use often in my classes, and I tell people, if you take care of the workers will take care of the process. In this case, it's absolutely true. There are companies out there right now around the world who the workers are coming up with suggestions, coming up with ideas on how to fix things. The workers will respond. They will do better. So we need to make sure we stay focused on them. We also, it's very important that we keep that single point of communications. In your organization, no matter how big or how small, you need to pick a phone number or a computer line, an email address, something where everybody can call into that. Now, you may need 2 or 3 people in queue to answer those things because you may have a lot of folks calling in, but there needs to be somewhere. You know, we've all had the experience. We bought something from the store, we take it home, it's broken, it doesn't work. We pick up the phone, we call the number, and when we call the number, all we get is a record. And the person who does answer says, I'm sorry, we can't take care of that for you, and they hang up. Don't be that same person. You need to establish a communication point within your organization with people full-time, 24/7, who can answer questions, people who can give out information. If they don't know the answer, they should tell the people, we don't know right now. We are trying to get the information. We will call you back. We will send you an email back. We will be in contact with you. But you need to make sure that people who call in feel secure. You got to remember, there's a lot of people home right now. People sitting there with their family, with their husband, with their wife, and they're frustrated. They want to be at work. They want to be earning money. They want to be able to go places, but they can't. They're confined to their house. And believe me, if the husband and wife and 4 kids are stuck in the house for a period of a few weeks, it's going to be a nightmare. We want to make it a little bit easier. So we want to give that employee a number where they can call and talk to somebody. I'll talk a little bit more about this later on, but it's very important that you establish a number where these people can call and get some information. They want a voice to talk to. They're used to talking across the room to their colleague in their company. Now they can't do that, so they have to talk by phone or computers. It's very, very important. During the crisis time, there are 5 major competencies that we need to think about. These competencies are absolutely necessary if we want to survive the company, if the company to survive. If we want to have long-term lasting company for people to come back to, because some of the companies we have right now are going to go out of business because of this crisis. They're going to lose so much money and stop all their production. They can't pay their salaries. They can't pay the overhead. Some of them are going to close. We want to focus on things that can do to keep the companies going. And there will be many, many companies going. Matter of fact, I believe most companies will survive. I believe most companies will recover. It's just going to take a little bit longer for some than the others. The first thing we need to do is we need that leader to stay focused. Everything he does needs to reflect how he cares about the workers' welfare and the company's survival. Those two things need to be in almost every briefing, every meeting, every time he's talking to the press or having a public statement. Those two things need to be in there. We're taking care of the workers and we're taking care of the company. And people will know if you're telling the truth or not, but that's what you need to focus on first. You've got to make sure that you're communicating to the people. Now, this is something that's different now from some of the other disasters. I mentioned to you before about tornadoes and hurricanes and typhoons and so forth. Those things are a little bit different. This one, we have people isolated in their home. They may have nobody else in their home but themselves, or they may only have their spouse and children. They want to hear something. So what I suggest you do is I suggest that you come up with some sort of teams. Now, when I'm teaching this on a longer basis, I make sure that people have what we call a recall roster. And I know for all you ex-military people, that's very familiar, a recall roster. You need to have a name of everybody in your company, and each person needs to have somebody else they call. In other words, I call John, John calls Mary, Mary calls Abraham. So each person has someone to call through the chain to check on them. You need to be checking on your people. It's nice to have a friend call you. Maybe the colleagues at work, you know, the guy who worked on the desk next to me. We had 4 people in the office. We used to always share coffee. We used to always go to lunch together. Now we're all separated in different houses in the city. It'd be nice if we could talk to each other. It'd be nice to communicate. We could share a little bit of stories and have a little bit of sympathy for each other, a little bit of empathy as to what's going on, try to help each other if we can. It's important that you keep them up to date on current conditions. If there's something that's going to get worse, you need to be truthful and tell them. If there's something that's going to be becoming better and the crisis is going away, you need to tell them. Make sure you get the communications out there. The leader needs to be honest. Do not lie to anybody in the company. Now, for some of you leaders, you're going to be in the middle of the company. You might have a board of directors above you, and you might have managers and workers below you. You have to be honest with everybody, everybody. Now, I'm going to tell you from experience, because I have been in that leadership position. You may not use the same words with the people above you that you use with the people below you. You may change the words in your story a little bit, but it's still the same story. You're still telling the truth to everybody. So it's okay to say the words a little bit different, but you need to make sure you're honest to everybody in the organization. Those are the first 3. Number 4 of the competencies that you absolutely need to have. The leader needs to bring, needs to bring all the resources together. You'd be surprised how much resources there are in an organization. We don't think about it, but when we start going to look for it, we find companies have an awful lot of resources. You know, right now, some of your people had to go home and they had to set up an office in their own home. Now, maybe they got a computer, but maybe it's an old one. Do we have some other ones at work that we can give them that they can use? What other resources do we have that we can get out and we can use? Do we have paper that we can make masks out of? Do we have some rubber gloves that we can give somebody who actually needs them? What resources do we have in the organization? We know that people are your biggest resource and your best resource, but there's a lot of other resources out there, and you need to think about grabbing hold of those resources. The leaders need to be responsible for all decisions. Now, as a leader, you can't reach everybody. If you've got 500 to 1,000 people, you're going to have some sub-leaders, some people below you who are reaching out to all these other folks. Those people are going to be going to geographically separated areas outside your building, maybe outside your city, maybe in another country if you're a global company. You need to have those sub-leaders making decisions on the spot for those people who need help. And you are responsible for what they decide. I know that's not comfortable for some of you because leader is held responsible, even if his subordinate sub-leaders make decisions. You need to make sure you're talking to them, giving them guidance, giving them motivation, keeping them inspired. If you're doing those things, they'll do the right things for the people. They know the people better than you do because they're closer to the people. They need to make good decisions. And if they make a good decision for the worker and it's not necessarily what you agree with, you need to think about them. They are there on the spot. We need to let them make good decisions, but we need to be responsible for them. Now, how about two people that are a good example of being responsible? You know, Winston Churchill during World War II, he lost elections 4 times trying to get into Parliament. But when he finally got into Parliament and then he became the Prime Minister, he was the right man at the right place at the right time. Every single day he was on the radio. He was with the news people. He was out front telling people, we will survive. He said, we will not give up ever. We will never, never, never give up. He was always painting a positive picture. He was trying to keep the people motivated and let them know that we can defeat the German army and we can win this war and we can be successful. We can have our community back. That's a leader. He was out front. And the fellow on the other side, Rudy Giuliani, he was the mayor of New York City at 9/11. Twin Towers go down. As soon as he could physically get there, he was at ground zero as soon as possible. Now you can see he has a mask on his face. That's because he needed it. He was there trying to do as much good as he could. He's not a fireman, he's not a policeman, he's not a construction guy to move big stones, but he was there trying to lead. He was there trying to motivate and support those people who were. And that's what a leader does. You know, a leader sometimes doesn't have to do the physical work. Sometimes what the leader does is give good words to those people who are doing the good work. Our first responders, we need to reward them. We need to tell them how much we appreciate them, how much they are important to everybody. Right now, in America and in other countries, I only know a little bit about America, there are an awful lot of medical people who are in a first responder position servicing people who are in the hospital. I've got a nephew who's a nurse, and I'll bet he's working 14, 16, 18 hours a day. I know him, and he will work as long as he has to every day to help people. We need to be out front helping them also and rewarding those people. Rudy Giuliani, he was on the scene and he recognized all those people who were doing so very, very well. Now, I mentioned something earlier about resources. Who knows where the resources are in your company? Probably not the director, probably not the CEO, but if you go down to the worker level, you need to ask everybody in the company. Have some small meetings and let your lower level workers identify where resources can come from. How can we get them? What do we need? A lot of people have a lot of good ideas. Now is the time to do something that I tell people when I have my conferences. You need to listen, listen, listen. Listen to your low-level people. They ask them for ideas, ask them for suggestions. They have very, very many of them, and most of them are good, but we don't know about them because our position's higher in the company. We may not be exposed to them. Listen to those people and let's find out those resources. What they're looking for, what everybody's looking for, is a leader. They're not looking for a boss. Do not be the boss, be the leader. And what does a leader do? The same thing a leader does in normal times, only now it's much, much more critical and much, much more important. You need to motivate the people. You know, those nurses, those doctors, those first responders, they get tired and they need motivation. Somebody has to pump them up, get them going. You need to be the leader who's doing that. You also have to inspire people. Inspire somebody to come up with a good idea. How can we do something a little bit different right now? Business is not the same as usual. Business has changed. So how can we change it? Listen to those people, inspire them, and they're going to give you lots of good ideas. You also have to lead by example, which means you, the leader, have to be there every single day, no days off. You have to be there as early as you physically can and stay as late as you physically can. Yes, you do need to rest. Yes, you do need to worry about your family, but you need to be on the front lines as much as possible if you're a good leader. Lead by example. And remember, I said earlier, you have to take responsibility for all the decisions that are made by the people below you in trying to get over this crisis. Those people will make some good decisions and bad decisions, but you need to back them up. You need to be held responsible for their decisions. Now, today, I've been talking to you about what you do in response. There are 3 pieces to this. As I mentioned earlier at the beginning, in my training, I talk about preparedness plan. What can you prepare before you have a crisis? to get ready for it, just in case. We don't know when this virus was coming. We don't know when there's going to be a tornado. We don't know when there's going to be an earthquake. We don't know when the rivers are going to flood or a dam is going to break in Italy. We don't know, but it's going to happen. There's some things you can do up in front. You need to learn how to have a preparedness plan. Then today I've been talking about what you do to respond. Then the third thing you need to do is to have a recovery plan. You need to have a plan so that you know what to do to recover. The storm has come, the storm is gone. What do we do to recover? Think of it like a tornado. And I don't know how many of you have ever been through a tornado. We got nice, beautiful homes in a nice small town. Short warning, 15, 20 minutes max. Tornado comes in, wipes out many of the buildings, tears down the school, knocks down the power lines, and then it's gone. The aftermath, about a half hour later, people are walking around and said, oh my God, look at this place. What happened to it? It's crazy. Now we have to recover. You need to have a recovery plan. What goes in action whenever you need to recover? So in my training, extending it more than what you're getting today, we talk about a preparedness plan and talk about a recovery plan. It's absolutely necessary. Now, something I want to point out, because there's been a lot in the news about this. It's been very, very spread all over the place. And it's got some bad rumors. It got some bad comments. Got some bad publicity. Be careful with it. When you send people to go home and stay home, if you ask them to do work, do they have a proper place? You know, I saw a picture the other day of some lady sitting at a desk and trying to work for her company, and she had her husband and 2 children tied up on the floor in a knot so they couldn't bother her. Now, that's rather silly, and I'm sure she didn't really do that, but it gets the point across. Sometimes we have people who are at home and they don't have the facilities, they don't have the privacy, they don't have the resources to respond and do the work that they did at work. At work, they were a great person on the computer at their desk with all the resources. At home, it might be different. You have to stop and think about that. And not everybody in their home has an office. Right now, with this type of crisis we have with the virus, we're sending many people into their homes. The other type of crisis we're talking about, usually they might go home for a small period of time, but then they're back at work. In this one, you're going to be home for a while. So have some empathy. Have somebody call them. And when they call, what should you do? The number one thing when you call somebody, what are you going to do? Listen, listen, listen. Let them do the talking. They're lonely. They've been separated for a period of time. Now, there's 2 things to remember as we get close to the end of this webinar. 2 very, very important things. Your attitude determines your altitude. If you don't take care of that attitude, boy, oh boy, you're going to go nowhere. You need to come to work every day during this crisis, during the recovery, with a positive attitude. We will get better. Things will be better. We will smile again. The sun will shine again. You've got to be positive about it. And for you leaders, one of the things that you need to really keep a focus on is that if you take good care of the people will take care of the process. Just think about it if you're the leader. What's going to happen when the crisis goes away and your workers come back to work and you cared for them, you talked to them, you motivated them, you gave them the information they needed, you gave them the supplies they needed, you really did care about your workers during the crisis. Now these people are going to come back to work and they're going to be motivated to help your company go again. These people will pay you back 100-fold. If you take care of them, they'll take care of the process. It's very, very important to remember. I'm on my last slide before I make an offer to you. This is something that I thought about the other day and I thought you need to know about it. Life is going to give you back what you put into it. You put in 120%, you're going to get back 120%. That's the good part. You know what? I'm all in. Are you? I'm not sure. Now, let's talk about what we can offer you. This part is a fun part. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give you something for free. How many people are giving you something for free today? Not many. Not many. Now, after this is over and you go to my website, you can find out there's many different training courses. Some of them are about leadership survival in a crisis, and some of them are short, some of them are longer. But you know what? They're all free. What I have done is I cut the cost of all my training to 0. I want to help you. I want you to get through this during the response portion. I want you to recover And I want you to make a plan for the next crisis. I want you to be able to plan for the future. So I'm giving it to you for free. Now, when you go to my website, you're going to see that you can either pay zero, nothing. You can pay 50% of what the price was before, or you can pay the full price. The choice is yours. Pay zero, pay half, or pay full. But I would ask you to remember, I'm a businessman, just like you're a business person, and I have to pay my rent. I have to pay my employees. I have to take care of my family. So please keep that in mind when you choose which one of those three you want. Either get it for zero, get it for half price, or pay the full price. The option is yours. So now I leave it up to you. What are you going to do in the future? What are you going to think that you need to do in the future? For me, it's not very hard. I know that for me, life is going to give me back 120% of what I give it. It's going to give me back more than I could ever ask for. Life will be good. You will be successful in the future. You will have a good future. You will have a good family. It's just going to take some time and it's going to take some work. But I want you to be prepared for the next time. Life gives you back what you put in, and I'm all in. Are you? Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this webinar. And if you go to my website, you can sign up for additional items if you wish. And remember, zero cost if that's what you want to give me. That's okay. And everybody who is on the roster signing up, who has registered, will get a video coming to that same email address in 2 days. It'll be in Russian and English. Thank you all very much. Have a great day.